there were at least 2,000 companies that entered the auto business because it clearly had this incredible future. And of course, you remember that in 2009, there were three left, two of which went bankrupt. So there is a lot more to picking stocks than figuring out what's going to be a wonderful industry in the future. I would like to just go over two items that I would like, particularly new entrants to the stock market, to ponder just a bit before they try and do 30 or 40 trades a day in order to profit from what looks like a very easy game. So on March 31st, I ran off a list of the 20 largest companies in the world by stock market value. And those names, a good many of which will be familiar to you, but they were led by Apple at slightly over $2 trillion. And it went down to the number 20th was worth 330 odd billion. But what I would like you to do is look at that list for a minute or two, if you want to, and then make an estimate, make your own guess. How many of those companies are going to be on the list 30 years from now? Here they are, these powerhouses. And how many would you guess are going to be on the list? Well, it's not going to be all 20. It may not even be all 20 today or tomorrow. This was March 31st. But what would you guess? Would you put on 5, 8? Well, whatever it would be, I would now invite you to look at slide 2, or L2, which goes back a little more than 30 years, and look at the top 20 from 1989. And if you look at the top 20 from 1989, there's two things that should grab your interest, at least two. None of the 20 from 30 years ago are on the present list. None. Zero. There were then 6 U.S. companies on the list, and their names are familiar to you. We have General Electric, we have Exxon, we have IBM Corp. I mean, they're still around. Merck is down there at number. None made it to the list 30 years later, zero. I would invite you to think about one other thing as you look at this list. 1989 was not the dark ages. I mean, we weren't just discovering capitalism or anything else. And people thought they knew a lot about the stock market, and the efficient market theory was in, and it was not a backward time. And if you look, the top company at that time had a market value of 100 billion, 104 billion. So the largest company in the world, title, in just a shade over 30 years, has gone from 100 billion to 2 trillion. At the bottom, the number 20 has gone from 34 billion to something a little over 10 times that. One thing it shows, incidentally, is that it's a great argument for index funds, is that the main thing to do was to be aboard the ship, a ship. They were all going to a better promised land. You just didn't know which one was the one they'd necessarily get on. But you couldn't help but do well if you just had a diversified group of equities. U.S. equities would be my preference, but to hold over a 30-year period. But if you thought you knew a lot about which ones to pick, or the person that you had hiring, you were paying a lot of money to, had all these ideas, and they could tell you their best ideas in 1989 did not necessarily do that well, although overall equities were absolutely the place to be. Secondly, people get enormously attracted to various industries. I mean, they think if you know if a company says it's in the XYZ industry and that's a popular one, you can sell IPOs, you can sell SPACs, people disregard sales numbers, earnings numbers. It's just, it's the place to be. So Berkshire Hathaway, where was the place to be in 1903 when my dad was born in 1903, but that wasn't really that big of news. But and it wasn't big news that actually Henry Ford was starting the Ford Motor Company. He'd failed a couple of times before, but he was about to change the world. I mean, the auto, when you think about everything, let's just assume that you decided that autos were this incredible thing, and someday there'd be an Indianapolis 500, and someday they'd have a review mirrors on cars, and someday 290 million cars would be buzzing around the United States, or autos, or the county trucks there. And so I decided to look at the history, and I thought I'd put up the list of auto companies from over the years. And I was originally going to put up just the ones that were the M's so I could get them on one slide. But when I went to the M's, it went on and on and on. So I just decided to put up the ones that started with MA. And as you can see, there were almost 40 companies that went into the auto business, just starting with MA, including our Marmon there in the middle column, and which lasted for a while, quite a while. It was selling cars in the 1930s were really quite special. But in any event, there were at least 2,000 companies that entered the auto business because it clearly had this incredible future. And of course, you remember that in 2009, there were 3 left, 2 of which went bankrupt. So there is a lot more to picking stocks than figuring out what's going to be a wonderful industry in the future.